Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Son of a podcast. This is a very special episode because it's not just me and my dad today. We are joined.
I am your father.
We are joined by my dad's best friend and my uncle, Fred. Say hello.
Hello, how you doing?
And today's episode is going to be a bit about learning about Fred, also learning about their dads, because you already know about my dad. And yeah, is there anything you guys want to say before we
Good night, man.
We're in your hands, man.
No? Okay, perfect. So, like I said, we're just going to mostly start with Fred right now. When did you get down here? Because you came down to the Costa del Sol before my dad, as my dad mentioned in one of the first episodes, where he met you in Sunnyview School. So, when abouts did you get down here?
It's 1975.
1975.
When I was 4. My family moved to Playa Mar in Torremolinos because my father, British guy, my mother's Uruguayan, they were living in England. And my mom said that England was too cold and depressing and they had to go somewhere sunnier, so they came here. And Franco had died, so
Yeah.
So 1975.
So, you came here just after the dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite a ballsy move, isn't it? But to go back then.
You know what? I don't think there was any. I think it was just coincidence.
Oh, yeah?
Because really being here in the Costa del Sol, as a foreigner in those days wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
So it was
Fair
just
enough.
coincidence.
And then a few years passed, 7 years passed more or less. And my dad comes down and you guys meet. My dad gave his own version of the story, but as
He's
me and
here
you
to
know,
set the record straight.
Yeah, I have a better memory than him.
yeah,
So,
exactly. And many times you,
That's
in
to
the
put it
past,
mildly. I know I have
Well, you've been
recollection.
doing good, man. You've been doing really good.
Well, I have recollection of events. What I'm really, really bad at is when they happen and in what sequence.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's why. So what's your version of the story when you guys met?
That way I think we coincide. Basically, my timeline is moved here in 75. Around 77, 78, 79. Around that time, I moved to Uruguay with my mom.
Oh, okay.
She just took off without telling my dad with me because they split up.
Yeah.
And we came back just before the football Mundial was 82. So it would have been like 81 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Naranjito. So it must have been like 81 or 80 or something like that. We came back. Me and my dad, I came back with my dad.
Okay.
And about a year later, so it must have been about 82 now, I guess.
Yeah.
81, 82, late 81 or 82. I went back to Sunnyview because I'd gone to Sunnyview for about a year and a half before we went to Uruguay. So they put me back in Sunnyview. And about a year later, him and Chanda started, and the girls. And I think he said it, Chanda, his older brother, was in my class. He was in the class below me. So I was the guy they asked to show Chanda around.
By the way, just for those people that haven't watched previous podcasts, Sunnyview is Sunnyview School, the school where we all grew up at.
Yeah.
The school that Gabe went to later on, and the school where I currently work at.
That's right. So I was at the school here in Torremolinos, and I showed his brother around the school on his first day. The guy from his class, Oscar, wasn't it?
That's cool.
Showed you around, and we pretty much hit it off straight away.
Okay.
Really, it was very, very almost instant. Me, Bert, and Chando as like a trio. I lived nearby relatively to where they lived, and then my dad, seeing how close I was with them, he actually moved closer to them.
Oh, really?
Little did I know that his medium to term plan was to ditch my ass
Yeah.
near them. You might as well have just got in a helicopter and throw me out the plane or something over there into their house. Sort of what happened. But at the time I thought, wow, what a lovely guy.
Yeah. So actually, seeing as you mentioned that, then a few years later, you actually moved in with my dad, didn't you? Well, my dad and his family.
Yeah.
Could you go through a bit through
How that happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I was saying about my dad is that the minute we moved near them, he started spending less and less time with me and more time in head offices in the UK and in Gibraltar. And I was spending all my time with them. And it would be basically any free time I'd go over to the house and hang out. And then I'd go home to bed and go to school and then repeat, I have to work, go back home, then go to their house. And this was over a period of years.
Yeah.
In those days, a year feels like 10 years. Now, when you look back at it, a lot happened in only like 3 or 4 years. But
Yeah.
So probably gradually, when I started hitting like we met when we were like 10 years old, 9 years old,
Yeah.
something like that. And by the time we were hitting like 13, 14, 15, I was spending all my time with these guys. My dad wasn't around much anymore. Then 15, 16, even less so. So it kind of went to that point where not only he no longer came back, so I would go to wherever he was once a month to get money. You know what I mean? So it was a real gradual dumping process. And so at the time when I think they did move to Malaga, the city, they'd been in El Benillo here, then moved to Malaga, the city. And it seemed not long after that, the mom said, look, you spend all your time here anyway, why don't you move in with us? You know, as long as your dad finances like your schooling and your expenses, you know, we don't want any money for you being here, for food or for anything, which at the time I was super grateful for.
Yeah.
In retrospect, they were mad because they were struggling financially. The last thing you should be doing as a responsible adult is bring more people into your house, because I didn't have to do it. I wasn't suffering or anything like that.
Yeah, of
We're
course.
good Catholics, man.
Yeah,
So we
but
were.
you know, one of the things that I didn't really think about at the time, but in retrospect, it kind of makes sense. Is they were in Malaga and I was still here, so we got to see each other less often. You see
Yeah,
what
by
I'm
that time
saying?
we moved to Malaga.
They just moved to
Right,
Malaga.
okay.
So
Malaga
until
Central.
then, there was no need really, because I was around their house all the time.
Yeah.
You know, just in case I go back to my apartment when it was time to go back to my apartment. But by then they were in Malaga, and when you're in Malaga, it's a city that's half an hour away by train.
Yeah.
You don't get to hang out as much, you know. So in retrospect, that made a lot of sense. So yeah, I accepted it straight away.
By that time we must have been what, 15, 14, 15, something like that?
I'd say 15 heading towards 16. I think because it was kind of like it really was like the last 2.5 years of adult until leaving school. But where the reason it felt so much longer is that was then my home. So after I left school, whenever I finished school, like, you know, university, in between, whenever I was here, that was like my home to come back to.
Yeah.
So for a long time after finishing school, I saw it as my home. The only time that stopped really was when they moved out and they were staying at your grandma's. Then it was no longer, there was no space. And it wasn't their home anymore. And so from that was like the break. And then from that point, whenever I came back, I would still like seek these guys out and crash without, you know, it was always a thing. I would always come and stay. But it kind of I detached myself from it feeling like my house.
Yeah.
Whereas when in Malaga, it was
still yours.
we just shared, the three of us shared a
And
room.
we'd grown up already by then. We were already a little bit older.
Yeah, we had grown up with girlfriends, all kinds of stuff like that. You know, so
It's funny because that's really the essence of Generation X. You know, when they say Generation X, we grew up on our own, blah blah blah, all that. Really, what Fred went through.
I'm the poster
is
boy.
exactly it.
Yeah.
You know, the poster boy for Generation X. Like, there you go. You know, you got to bear in mind that this went on for like from the age of 13 to like maybe even earlier, 12.
It was gradual.
You know, there was a time when Fred was pretty much living on his own and you know, getting his own shopping and, you know.
That started before he even left the house.
Exactly.
Because of the Spanish thing. I spoke Spanish and he didn't.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So from the age of like 10, I was going to the pharmacy, going to the shop, talking to the landlord, paying the rent, not earning the rent, but paying it. So that was already there. I was already kind of like in charge of the household, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's definitely a Generation X scenario, you know, and to a point where one of the most striking things as a parent, you look at things different when you become a parent, but to think that I moved in with them and my dad never met his parents.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Really?
Absolutely
They never, not once.
crazy. Never asked.
Wow.
Never was curious. Didn't ask any questions. For all he knew, they were a bunch of smackheads.
Yeah. Wow, that's
Didn't have
crazy.
an address to where they lived in Malaga. Didn't know where I was living. That's a whole different time. Yeah.
And when your dad was around, we used to live literally 150 meters away. It wasn't like we lived kilometers away.
I could see his house from my window, from my balcony. I could see their house. They had a big villa, and I was in an apartment just directly above it, basically. So you can just down there. And he never kind of went and knocked on the door and said, ironically, they never either. This talks about the time. So my dad was useless, right? In that sense, granted, worse than most. But it's also ironic that it shows the sign of the times that his parents didn't go, look, we really should meet your dad either.
Yeah. They
Just
never
like,
went,
whatever.
my parents were very sociable, very sociable Spanish family. They never actually went to seek your dad out, which is also quite surprising. You know, I mean, your dad was a very quiet guy. I think I never really spoke to him apart from
Hellos and goodbyes.
Hello, Mr. Bloy. How you doing, Mr. Bloy? Never Douglas, never ever. But my parents were, especially my mom. My mom was a very proper, middle class lady.
Yeah.
She is the kind of woman that would say, before I take your child in, your son in, can we meet you? Not once. I don't think she even tried.
Yeah, he didn't even go to my graduation.
Really?
No, like now it's, your kid's got 18,000 events a week at school, and you're a crap daddy, but you don't go to all of them and just quit your job and just basically spend all your time going to school to see him play with plasticine. My dad never went to my school.
Yeah.
Like, not once. Basketball, graduation, awards, games, 0 times. I paid my own school fees with his money.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a sub story because I was a little rich kid, if you look at it that way, right? Yeah. Kind of like a less than zero thing. So dad got decent money, put you somewhere, pay for your apartment, leave you to it. I had a great time. But that was thanks to these guys, really. I think I would have been different had it not been for them. But I paid for my own school fees. So I'd get the money, I'd stick it up in an envelope, and I'd give it to them. I could have literally spent from age 13, my dad's raining, the ghost is coming to get me. I could have been from 13 to 18, never have gone to school, lived with drug addicts in Kosovo or somewhere. He wouldn't have known.
Yeah, that's so unthinkable, like especially nowadays, where it's like.
And you know how they talk about? You guys talked about that in your previous one of your previous podcasts about the internet and the dangers, and yes, it's scary that some weirdo through the internet can talk to my daughters. You know what's scarier? The fact I'm out at 11 o'clock at night in the neighborhood and some weirdo down the street can pull me in a car.
Yeah.
Because, even well-to-do kids with normal parents, it was like you stay out till it gets dark or till it's a curfew they give you. And what you're doing is normally nothing good because there's nothing much to do. So you end up,
I was saying that last week, wasn't it?
You are.
Last week's podcast.
It's bad. You go camping. That's, an hour, 2 hours away by train through treacherous trails and knives and no phones and no mobiles and no other phones, and see you on Sunday.
Yeah. And actually the routes that you guys took to go camping as well was
the Caminito del Rey,
was not the safest.
No, because it was the shortest, but it was super dangerous.
Yeah, the famous Caminito del Rey that is now a nice little tourist attraction, boarded up. It's not boarded. What, they've built a new one.
They built on top,
like a safe platform above it. Yeah.
Well, the old one is the one we used to cross.
But not to be heroes, it's just the shortest route to get to the lakes.
Yeah.
And we used to cross the railway tunnels at the time there was no safety distance between the tracks and the wall. It was just like
and you go after school on Friday, so by the time you're actually hitting the Caminito del Rey, it's getting dark.
Yeah,
it's quite different doing this stuff when it's windy and dark, and you're big. You have to carry all your water for the weekend, so you carry these massive rucksacks, these little rickety streets, paths. Anyway.
Well, during all that time, our parents assumed we were going camping, but they didn't really know. And we had no phones. There was no, we weren't communicating at that time.
And half the time, they hadn't been to where we said we were going at all. Yeah. So they had no clue. We could be sitting on a Timbuktu for all they know.
Totally. We're good kids. We didn't.
Yeah, luckily we were good kids.
But once we were there, we got up to shenanigans that, we weren't, again, not bad. We didn't do any drugs. We didn't do any, we didn't kill any animals or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But for survival.
Food.
But we did all sorts of things because there was no gaming, there was no devices. That's all we could do.
Yeah.
Just find your own way out in the wild. Even here, just across the road here, there was no roads. It was just fields. And as I said last time, those fields were full of glass. They were full of everything, and but it was a lot of fun. We had fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was fun. I'm not sure if it was more fun than gaming, but
if the games had been any better, you never would have seen me in the street.
Yeah.
Forget about it. No chance.
Yeah.
But we can just sit at home and watch Spanish TV news or some church thing.
That time
you go to the neighborhood and walk around and start throwing rocks at things and see what happens. It's
Well, now moving on, how did you feel? Because obviously it's not the same as your best friend and staying over for the whole time, whereas your best friend actually living with you. You wake up, you go to sleep together. because you guys were in the same room, or were you in separate rooms?
We shared a room.
You
Shared room, yeah.
And
Two
what-
beds, 3 people. Go figure.
Really?
There was no like spooning. We took turns sleeping on a couch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that like? Because like I love my best friends to bits, right? But like I think I'd be like guys, just fuck off already. I want to be by myself for a second. You know what I mean?
Well, I think to me it was pretty seamless, to be honest. It was just pretty natural. So I can't see. I mean, we spent so much time together anyway.
Yeah.
And once we moved to Malaga, it was a chore to see Fred because at that time taking the train to Torremolinos or the train to Malaga from Torremolinos was quite a trip. Right? It wasn't as fast as it was now.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that once we started the practicalities of sharing rooms and dirty socks and smelly socks and all that stuff, maybe there might have been some sort of occasional friction, but to be honest, I can't remember.
Yeah, but not anything
I can't ever remember having an argument with these guys.
friendship breaking.
What I do remember is planning a lot of parties because for a while he still had the apartment in
Yeah, I was
Torremolinos,
actually going to go on to that now.
right? So that apartment was still there.
I had it the whole time. Till I finished.
All the time, exactly. So it was just, and most of our friends used to live in that area or close enough. So I remember sitting in our study table in the room, sitting there and planning parties. It's like
Right.
it's Halloween, so what are we gonna do? Like this and plan. That was absolutely great, absolutely great. And again, our parents.
Yeah, because we didn't go out. We didn't go out to Malaga. But we were still at high school. We went to Torremolinos, Madre.
They were all house parties, all the parties that you had.
Or house parties.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, it turned more into house parties. But yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, they were cheaper. They were more controlled. They were really good.
So, and every time you needed money, you went all the way to Jib, said, "Dad, I need."
Yeah, but it was a set amount. Like I had a budget,
Oh, okay.
so it was kind of the excuse to see each other once a month.
Yeah.
I'd take the bus all the way to Jib, spend like the night or two, and then come back on
And
Sunday.
come back. And that money gave you to pay for the apartments that you were renting. You were renting it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also the
Yeah.
schooling and the food, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was done separately. So the schooling, I think you paid every semester. So that was normally like a check for the school that you gave me.
Yeah.
The apartment was monthly, so yeah, it was the month that was also probably a check, I guess, in those days. Yeah, but then my spending money was really the bit that I noticed. You know what I mean? Which was
A lot of cash.
it was a lot of cash considering how little these guys had. That's a little bit unfair.
Yeah.
Where'd you keep it? I never knew.
Kid, under your pants.
Never,
I don't know.
I never knew because
I don't know.
Didn't even cross my mind. Like, where'd you keep your
I
cash?
don't know. So
You had it somewhere.
yeah, I didn't hide it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Apparently, just laid it on a pile on the table. We were very honest about people. I don't know. But it was my dad pretty much financed our nights out for the last couple of years of high school, did they? Because I had the cash,
Yeah.
right? And these guys get some cash, but it was getting worse, kind of thing in their situation. So that was pretty cool. That was a good time, wasn't it?
It was.
Like,
It was
kind
great.
of
I mean,
like
our teenage
whenever they
years-
didn't have anything, they'd be like, "Okay, I got some money. Let's."
Our teenage years were great.
That was a lot,
Yeah.
but it was for beers and things, wasn't it?
And looking back at it, what do you think about that whole situation? Because you already mentioned that it's kind of crazy that your parents never met, but because you have children now as well, could you ever think of doing that?
No, it's
Like
mad. It's neglect.
Yeah.
It's fluke. I could have turned out to be a drug addict or
Yeah.
criminal or something. It's absolute fluke that I chose to hang out with nice people, with a nice family, and that I'm a pretty straight guy. I've been in. I'm one of those people. Touch wood. That has been in every situation that should have turned me bad, and hasn't.
Which is funny. I always mention that. I always said that it's a testament to your parents. The little they hung out with you, they actually managed to get some sort of sense into you somehow, right?
It's definitely a case for nurture versus nature, isn't it? 'Cause
Seriously, yeah.
I lived with my mother for 8 years, 9 years. I lived with my dad for, let's say, put it 3.
Yeah.
I'm 54. The rest without them. And I spent, if you include the time after finishing school, I was educated by his family. I seriously, forgetting how much fun I had, and my recollection of it was seamless. As in, from my perspective, I had no issues. I didn't it would feel like it was uncomfortable or anything like that. But I do remember being very conscious that because it was a gradual process of being on my own in my apartment, I was almost becoming like a little old man in habit. My apartment was my apartment, so I'm 13, 14, and I do what I want to do there. It looks how I want it to look. I eat what I want to eat. I eat when I want to eat.
Yeah.
So I basically had developed a lot of grown-up skills, but no cohabitation skills. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was developing an attitude of someone that would be horrible to live with because they'd expect everything to be their way, like an old lady type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And yeah, you adapted pretty well to living with us.
Living with them, it made me put me in a house with another 5 kids, where you're all sharing stuff. You follow the rules of the household. You eat when they say you're going to eat. You eat what you're going to eat. You're sharing a room. Two of us as kids screaming and shouting and arguing out in the outside. You get used to it really, apart from a lot of really strong moral values, it gave me the skill of tolerance.
Yeah.
Just being able to be okay with other stuff that isn't my way.
And living...
Not in a way that I suffered. I just mean it gave me that skill set I didn't have at all. Zero.
Yeah. And living with... Closely, you're living with my dad's parents. Did you ever see them a bit as your parents, so to say? Like whenever someone...
Not in a way where I would call them mom or dad.
Yeah.
That never happened. But I idolized them both. His dad to me was like an icon, like a legend.
Yeah.
He's like everything my dad wasn't, basically. He knew about everything. These days before the internet.
Yeah.
So, I asked my dad, so what's this? I don't know. Didn't know anything other than what he did. And there was nothing to check. I didn't have the encyclopedia written down. I got to check it for myself. I just sit there lacking knowledge in my own space. And I'm a very inquisitive guy. His dad had an answer for everything. And I just found it like fascinating. And then the mom gave me the bit I was missing from not being with my own mother. The warmth, the kindness, all those sort of things. So for me, I wouldn't say I saw them as my parents, but I loved them as if they were. I think that would be fair. And to me, they were the perfect family. And I lived with them, so it was not like an outside-in thing. The irony, and maybe you'll touch on that later, I know, the irony is that to me, and I lived with them, it was the ideal household, the perfect household, perfect parents, perfect siblings, best friends.
Little did we know.
And little did I realize that after, when everybody finished and left the house and flew the nest, how much conflict there was within them and the way they perceived their situation particularly with their dad. It really went from hero to zero. And I always struggled with that because for me, because the thing you remember, the thing you have to understand that's different between me and them, same household, same everything, same dinner, is I had my little wad of cash.
Yeah.
With my dad. So it's very easy for me to be Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. like, oh, this is the best people ever, when I'm not missing out on anything else.
Yeah.
If I didn't have the wad of cash and I'd properly lived with them and I'd to beg and ask for decisions that affected my future and everything like that.
Yeah.
The minute I finished high school, I was off to university, financed by my dad.
Yeah.
They were ready to go to university, but there was no finance to do it. You see?
The story is...
So that's what builds up a little bit of resentment and stuff like that,
Yeah, the story is that a really, really long story short, and I think we could probably do 2 or 3 podcasts just on this, our relationship with our dads, is that when we were younger, when we were in Madrid, the reason we were in Madrid was because we were pretty loaded. Right, we were I wouldn't say rich, but we were a high middle class, high-end middle class. We lived in a very exclusive neighborhood. And then suddenly my dad, for specific reasons, lost all his money and he never recovered it. And yet he made it his life's ambition to recover that money and became an obsession for him. But he never did.
Yeah, no, he didn't. And the thing is, like, when they arrived, their story economically, and it's not just the money doesn't matter, but it's how it affects you, is from here to there.
Yeah.
Mine was from there to there. So when they arrived, they walked in. Bear in mind, I'm in a private school.
Yeah.
They walked around as if they needed gloves. It was such like this hippie, hick, scrappy school in the mountains, full of hippies, stinky people, depressed families that maybe weren't very wealthy that managed to get their kids there. They were walking around like Schitt's Creek, like the series. You know, like oh, these people, these poor people, right?
We came from a very, very posh neighborhood,
and they were in the house they were in was how many bedrooms?
It was a dump.
It was an old house. It had 14 bedrooms, and this is dumb. It's just like Schitt's Creek. It's like slumming it. You know what I mean? Like how we were rich and now we're so poor with our 14 bedrooms.
Yeah, when I mean dump, I mean dump. You know, it was a very big house, very, very nice, very old. The previous owners had like 10 children, so they had 14 bedrooms everywhere. But according to art standards, it was falling to pieces. You know?
Yeah, because they only had like 2 maids instead of 12 or whatever. But for us, it was like, oh, these guys are posh.
Yeah, the garden was a small garden with a pool instead of a huge garden with two tiers with a pool only on the bottom. You know, it was.
Yeah, so they came in above the level of myself and everybody else economically, and by the time we finished high school, they were way below.
Way below.
And that affected each of them, at least from my observation from outside, differently. It probably affected Albert, correct me if I'm wrong, the least in the sense of he's the least materialistic out of all of them. His older brother, Chendo, you know, he quite liked being the posh, you know, preppy guy. And he was all, you know, and also the older you're a bit more aware of these things. The girls,
I think that was it.
The girls don't really remember having all that money, so they didn't. They also suffered. They weren't old enough to really remember what the hell Madrid was about. They remember from pictures and a couple of stories, but these guys were the only two that were old enough to really remember what it was like to live there. You know,
my sister suffered the consequences, but they don't really know why. And Lucas, the younger brother, who's 12 years younger than us, he never ever knew any kind of thing but poverty. He always wondered what the big fuss was about. He said, "What? I mean, I don't know. This is what there is." But the issue was, and this is what the rift in the family started, was when especially Chenda and I got older, and we realized that it could have never not have been like that. I mean, it shouldn't have been that way. Yeah. Right. My dad got obsessed with the old life,
status and all that.
With the status, but never really put the effort he should have, in my eyes, should have put into it. Once I got older and I started working and I saw the you know, that you can actually find the job and you can get money by working, I thought, what's the big deal? All you have to do is just work hard. And I couldn't remember ever my dad working. He always had plans, but he seemed to be praying all the time to make those plans come true. Right. And then we've touched upon this.
That was also a progressive thing.
Exactly. That was for me a huge deal.
The less money, the more praying.
Yeah. So the 2 years I spent, or the year and a half I spent at home after graduating because we couldn't afford to send me off to university, I saw a lot of that. And then I suddenly started thinking, like, hang on a minute, why, you know, if we're really that broke, why are you sitting there trying to make plans to become the president of a huge company? Why aren't you, you know, working, finding a job, right? That was my reasoning. And I didn't really think about it at that time because just like Fred, for me, my dad was my idol. He was the coolest, best man I'd ever met. And I loved him dearly. And he knew everything. I think subconsciously that started planting a little seed in me that grew and grew and grew throughout the years. And eventually it pretty much broke our relationship until he was older and I was older and I tried to understand it. Never quite made amends. And that is also a whole, I suppose, something that would never happen now. Or maybe it would, I don't know. Maybe just.
Yeah, I think that they suffered from a long decline, and it was like not really accepting the new status. It was just a very slow, gradual decline of status. You know, so if you did like a time lapse, a 5-year time lapse, you know, 3 lots of those, and they're sitting on a 10,000 euro table with silverware that's the table's falling apart, the woods are held together by tape, the silverware is a bit chinked and cranked, and you know, we're all acting as if we're millionaires still. Yeah. You know, and the food in the silver platter, bling, and it's like a cheap piece of food. That was kind of the thing, you know. That was perhaps the depressive thing. If they'd just been normal, regular folk with a regular expectation of standard, they would have been much better. I think if you would have stayed in, after that big house, you went to Benillo, to an apartment, which is quite small for the number of people they were, but something like that, you would have stayed there at that stage, and just your dad had gone and got a job at Renfe or something,
You would have just been
you'd be
normal.
all right.
Right?
You'd have a normal family, and you'd have had your education.
Yeah.
And I think they're highly educated, so that bit had nothing to do with money. The education,
It was a status, really. It was.
But it was more it was always this belief that initially it's this belief that his position in the world, he deserves to be great.
Yeah.
What we kind of established years later was we think he became great by accident, not by design.
He was a bit like Forrest Gump.
Yeah, like Forrest Gump, like he was in the right place at the right time, and he was very intelligent, all that kind of stuff. So we don't think he was the business mastermind he'd convinced himself he was.
Yeah.
We think he was just a very smart guy in the right time, in the right place, at a time in the history of the world that he fitted into very high levels of society. And normally you find that with higher class families, is you have all kinds of people in positions of authority that don't maybe deserve to be in those positions of authority. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Look when George Bush Jr. was the president, and he's like, which way around to hold the map? You know, it's that kind of thing. So I'm not suggesting he's like that. He was incredibly educated. But as a businessman, I've been friends with these guys, how long? 1980, put it? 45 years?
45 years, yeah.
Yeah, so 45-year wingspan. His dad was a terrible businessman, as was my dad, as was probably most of my friends' dads.
It is something I was mentioning to you this morning. It is something that our parents had in common, is that they were really, really bad with money. They had money, but they were really bad with money. And my dad died in poverty, and I think your dad
both my dads. I had a stepdad and a dad. Mm-hmm. I've had 3 dads.
Yeah, and so their relationship, it's quite. Our relationship with our parents, with our dads anyway, is quite striking because of that. Because we ended up turning the tortilla around totally.
We took like a sort of helicopter view of the whole thing. You could say our parents achieved much more than we achieved. They were much wealthier than we've been. Right. Their status was way higher than ours was. They traveled 100 times more than we did, and had zero to show for it. And we will, however little we do in life, the one thing that separates us from our parents is we will leave what little we can to our kids. Yeah. And you guys will hopefully have it a bit easier than we had it, which is the normal way of doing stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know about, actually I do know about your parents, but my family and his family, they did not go, oh, we have €4, let's put 2 aside for their future, let's put 1 aside for the nice car. My parents are like, woo, millions, bam, 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 jets, this, that, diamonds, you name it. Just the right amount so they could die with nothing. So, I mean, if you look at it on the surface of it, the most selfish MFers ever. Yeah. My dad, similar thing. My dad was like, oh, business, died. You know, you just think, come on, man. Really? That's your master plan? Mm-hmm.
My dad the same. Even practically till the last 3 years of his life, he was still holding on to the prayer, literally, that everything would come back to him somehow. And it shaped the way it shaped our upbringing. And very often that you see that reflecting in your upbringing, because I promised myself 3 or 4 things that I would never ever do with you that my dad did with me. One of them is lie.
Actually, I was going to say, we'll go in, that's one of my next questions.
You know how Mom and I are incredibly strict with the never lying to anybody, and it's because of that. Because my dad, whether he wanted to or not, he lied to us for a long, long time. You know, he not in the lying sense of, you know, I have money when we didn't. It was more in the these are the moral values that I expect you to follow. But I'm gonna be obsessed with money all my life, and I'm gonna do anything to try to get money for free from people so I can keep a certain lifestyle. Right? For me, that's lying, really. And yet he was telling us, be meek. You know, don't be obsessed with money because it's not the answer, right? And I always promised myself that in your case, I would give you the freedom to that, and I would never tell you, don't worry about money.
I mean, I think the thing to not give ourselves too much credit for anything is it's a fairly common cycle of life that you try and be different to the bits you didn't like about how you were raised. Yeah. It's a fairly common thing, isn't it? If you came from the rough thing, you want to have nice things for your kids. If you have nice things, then you want to make sure your kids learn the values. You know, you're always compensating for something. So the best we can hope to do for you guys is to not overcompensate so much that you then react to that by doing the opposite again. You know what I mean? Like my dad didn't have enough ambition. I wish I had more.
Which is a worry that every parent has.
And that's it's sort of some, my father gave me one piece of advice. And it was, at the time, it was the lamest piece of advice I don't remember ever given me. I put it in a drawer till I was about 40, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because it was lazy advice, but it has been the most valuable advice I've had, I think. And that is, everything in life is a balance. And it's broad enough, like a horoscope, to say, yeah, that means me. That I can see what, but it really is. As in, that is not too much of this, not too much of that, not too much work, not enough work, not too much love, not enough love, etc. And he was right about that. The irony is he didn't do it himself. He just did 100% work and then died.
Yeah.
It's true.
If he would have followed his own advice, he would have had a bit of balance, had a little bit of enjoyment, a little bit of work, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of family. But yeah.
I took that advice of my dad, saying, you got to be meek, don't worry too much about money. And then I thought, that's a great advice, and I'm also broke. I'm a budding artist. That pain is what's gonna bring the art out of me. Yeah. And by the time I was 35, I realized it was crap. But it was too late by then. By the time, it's like, okay, I'm 35. What do I got to show for it? I got to start working now.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of that I blamed on my dad. Right, rightly or not. I don't know.
Just before I'm sure you have a next question, but the one thing I will say that on this whole timeline of things, the from afar, the one thing that really changed the chip from hero to zero was after your mom passed away. That seemed to she kept the balance, even when he was doing things like behaving in a way that was. They were starting to get older and kind of go, Dad, I'm sure that's the right way to go about doing business, and maybe you should not spend the money on this. They were kind of doubting it. The mother was like the balancing act. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, imagine a weight on either side of a seesaw. Yeah. When she left, it just went boom.
She was the conscience of the family.
And it really kind of ruptured so many different things, because also she was the link to the family, to the Malaga family, which also had some degree of influence. Not necessarily good, just an influence. And suddenly you had like this charismatic, guru-esque type, larger-than-life character, dreamer, as the center of the family. And at that point, because of the age they all went, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So he really went from like this icon to like somebody in the corner babbling to himself type thing. Not as bad as it sounds, but really, that was what I observed from outside. Like I would come back every year for holidays, like, hey, is everybody? I go see a mom, go see the dad, sit and chat. And then almost immediately after the mom passed away, the whole dynamic of the family changed immediately. And then the bitterness seemed to come out. Yeah. It seemed like everybody blamed him for her suffering and a whole bunch of other things for another episode, for sure. But yeah.
So that's what you saw from the outside. Because obviously, I've only known the relationship between you and your dad, my grandpa, as a bad and quite rocky relationship. Because that's what I've seen during my lifetime.
Yeah, of course.
But obviously, you say that when you were younger, it was you saw him as an icon, and
totally.
He was your hero, kind of thing.
He was perfect. He was a successful man, well dressed, very slightly arrogant, but at the same time, a man of the earth, a Catholic, and mostly incredibly intelligent. He had a wealth of knowledge that nobody had around us at all. Later on in years, you could tell that at that time. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't not a wealth of knowledge, but because there was no internet, you couldn't fact check him, right? Yeah. So a lot of the things might have been hearsay, whatever, but he had incredible memory. So everything he heard, he retained. And so, and he had a lot of experience in a lot of fields. He was a great studier. So he was I inherited that from him, the wanting to know stuff all the time. But as opposed to me, he retained it and he learned it. So he had something, like Fred says, every time you mention anything, he had the answer.
And at what point did the relationship go from hero to zero? Is it more or less what Fred said?
In my case, when I got back from the UK and I asked him for asylum so I could get my life in order, one of his ventures was he asked for a loan from his brother to open up the computer academy that we had. He asked me to help him. And that's when everything started changing, because I started working with him on a daily basis. And I realized that that for him, having children wasn't what it was like, say, for my mom. It wasn't a family that you create and something you love and nurture because that's what you do, because that's what you feel inside. For him, children are the means. Basically, they're your helpers, and I think that's a generational thing, right? In the same way that in the 50s, mothers were housewives. For my father, children were the minions, right? So you love them. There was nothing there. He loved us for sure, but we're there to help him. And he made it really clear when I started working with him.
That's
he said, I expect you to run the business with me, and I expect you to do this, and you're my son, and
you're not going to get paid.
And you're not getting paid, or you're going to get paid whenever I can.
And he's 20-something, so...
Yeah, by that time I was like 26 or something. Yeah. And I'd been earning my own living for quite a few years already, right? So I said, okay, I'll do this. What's in it for me? He says, well, there's nothing in it for you. The love that you have for me. I'm like, okay. Well, how's that work? He's like, well, because, and then he talked about God. And that's when it started happening. It all finished one night. I mean, it sounds really petty, but for me, it was a breaking point. I remember distinctly one night, it was New Year's Eve. My sisters were going to a party. It was raining. And I had my own plans, but my dad said, drive your sisters to their party or whatever they're going on. I said, I can't because I'm late. And I was thinking, well, why don't you drive them, right? Yeah. And plus, I think I had a couple of beers or something, and I just didn't want to drive. And eventually, we had an argument, and the final bit of that argument, he said, I shouldn't have to ask you to drive your sisters. And I said, well, if you don't ask me, I'm never not going to know that that's what you want. And he said, a father should never have to tell his son what he wants. The son should always know, right? That was a moment where I said, oh my God, this is not the guy I thought he was. It was a really stupid argument, but that for me was make or break. And after that, things weren't the same. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I still lived with him. I still had a cordial relationship with my dad until much later. But that was the breaking point. But it had accumulated a little bit from the moment I got back from the UK.
And now moving on to you, because obviously your relationship with your dad must have been quite strange, I guess.
Minimal.
Yeah, because he was in Gibraltar. So what was that dynamic like?
Cordial. Friendly. Mm-hmm. Business-like. Respectful. Mm-hmm. There was no disrespect. I wouldn't be disrespectful to him. He wasn't treat me badly, didn't speak to me badly. We were more like roommates when we lived together.
Yeah.
And his for me it was a shock because I've been raised by my mom who was Uruguayan and two sisters, older sisters. Yeah. So for me, up to the age of 8 or 9, it was all hugs and kisses and singing and dancing and fun and drama and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. When I went from there to be with my dad at age 8 or 9, it was like moving in with the bank manager. Particularly when we had a big-ish house, a villa not far from here actually.
Yeah.
And it was like 4 bedrooms with like a servant's quarter upstairs. One of those ones that's all like dark inside and there's like a deer head on the entrance.
It was great.
A fireplace.
Yeah. I love that house.
And it's just me and him. And he didn't talk, he didn't say anything, he didn't really do any. When he was not working, he was like reading the newspaper, drinking a glass of whiskey by a fireplace type thing. That kind of character. Like in the movie, like the stereotypical British dude in a movie, reading the Financial Times, my dad. If they came, he wasn't against them coming. He wasn't like, you guys don't have fun. He wasn't controlling or anything like that. He was kind of like, I'm doing my thing, you do your thing. But he saw as I understand it, he saw the big thing that pissed my mom off. Let's just put things as they are, because they're both dead now, so I can say what I want.
Yeah.
But my mom was pissed that there's a big custody battle. When she took off to Uruguay with me and my sister, that telling my dad, there were like court cases, there were judges. I had to go to court and testify why I wanted to be with my mom and not my dad. And there was like private investigators following us around Uruguay. It was a mess, right? Yeah. More dramatic for my sisters and my mom than for me because I was young. I was like 9 years old, so I didn't really know what was going on. So my mom, years later, so go back to when I'm 18 now. So I've already done the whole thing. I've lived with these guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My mom, when I said that my dad didn't meet the Treacherous ever, My mom met the Treacherous in 2009
Really?
when we were in Torremolle, when we moved to Spain. We had telling another.
She met my dad. My mom had already died.
So your mom had already passed. Your dad. And she was pissed that my dad had fought so hard to get me, and when he got me, he dumped me.
Yeah.
Her interpretation of it was, you just didn't want me to have the kid because you didn't seem to give a shit.
Yeah.
You know, and what she says, aren't we lucky that the Treacherous were there to bring him in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Being fair to my dad, it seems that what he constituted being a good dad, and it kind of fits the times a little bit, was providing. So good education, a house, money, university options, employment, job done. No hugs, no kisses, nothing else. That's your job as a dad. The mom's job is to give you the hugs.
Yeah.
She's already done that. Now you're getting older. Time for good education. And in some ways, that is true. If I'd stayed in Uruguay, I would have been a bum sooner. I became a bum much later in real life.
I think you're right. I think that the thing is, it's not just that. I think your dad was like that. He was a very, very incredibly reserved man. I mean, when I remember walking into the house, he'd be exactly like you say, reading the newspaper with a little glass of in the balcony, and he would just nod us and go like that. He wouldn't even say like, "Hi, how are you doing?" or anything like that. How's school? I think that was just his whole demeanor for whatever reason, and he was not as same as my dad. My dad always said he loved us, but I think it was the Catholic way of loving. You have to love people, right? But my dad, after 18, hugs never. You know, that was really, really rare. Yeah. And I think it was just a generational thing. Yeah. They might say it, but they didn't. You know, exactly. Yeah.
Fair enough. So do you remember when you moved back with your dad? So what was that transition like? It must have been quite. It was difficult.
Yeah, but I'll never get to know what actually happened behind the scenes, because one minute we're hiding from my dad in Uruguay and his custody, and the next minute my dad is being welcomed to the house in Uruguay to sort of hang out with me and play football and stuff like that and see if we get along, and then propose the idea of me coming back. So that was an agreed thing between them. The thing that swung it for me, of why I said yes, now in retrospect, I'm sure I didn't have a choice, but it was made to look like my choice. Yeah. The one nice thing about my parents is, despite them wanting to kill each other, they never actually spoke badly of each other to me, which was, so I didn't really wasn't part of their fight. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which I was lucky in that way. But the thing that swung it for me was a Polaroid. Really? A Polaroid picture. My dad had a Polaroid picture of my bed here in Spain covered with presents. Really? And I thought, I need those. That was it. That swung it. I put on my presents. You live here now. And those first months of just before these guys came, we just being in that dark house. In those days in Spain, like when you try to like put the light on or do anything with all electricity, you electrocute yourself every time. You know, turn the light on, and it's just dark.
I remember that, yeah.
Weird deers and shadows and fireplaces and stuff. I looked like I'd moved in with like some character from a cartoon or something. I missed all that affection, all that craziness. So it was horrible. I hated it. Honestly, I hated it. I wish I'd stayed at the time. I wish I'd stayed in Uruguay with my sisters and my mom. I wasn't happy at all. But really, I started making friends. You know, and these guys helped a lot. Yeah. But there was other friends as well in the class, and I got on with the kids in my class. So, you know, people like Sarah and. You know.
We're a very small community. I mean, the expat, we were all part. Even we were Spanish, but we were part of the expat community over here. At that time, it wasn't that big. The local, the proper residents. Expat community.
But when you take it, this is what I'm talking about. When you're young, each year seems like a century of things happening to you. You bear in mind, let's say I'm moving back here at 9, and then 10 I'm meeting these guys, and then 11, 12, 13 I'm hanging out with them all the time. 14, 15, 16, whatever, I'm gradually moving in with them until I actually move in with them. I pretty much replaced what I was missing from my own mom and sisters and stuff with them. Yeah, kind of seek it out. You know, you seek out that warmth and that love and that environment and stuff like that. So my dad did the right thing in that respect, as they put me near it. He's like, well, I'm not going to give you this, but they seem nice. Rent an apartment overlooking their house. Oh, a bit creepy when you think about it. When you sit there reading his paper, he could see your house.
He could see our house, yeah.
Maybe his way of overlooking to see what's going on.
Like a castle, like you will Dracula, like.
The stuff that went on in that apartment afterwards, after your dad left.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's for a few episodes.
Yeah, so
down the road.
don't feel sorry for me. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right. I had a great time.
Great time. Man.
I had everything really. I had all the tools and the money and the bits and the pieces and university and that, and I had great friends and I got to live with them, so I had all that affection.
Yeah, man, I remember
and
when
an apartment. So I got an apartment to party at 14, 15, 16. You know, like, it just...
When
was
Karate
everything.
Kid came out, the first thing this guy did was go out and get himself a pair of nunchucks and some shurikens, right? So we were walking around with proper, throwing metal stars at people. It's like, choo!
Wall-up sleeves on your blazers. Yeah, man. That's how you do it.
Well, after all this, you already kind of started talking about it, but you said there was 3 things and we got into one. What, with your relationship with your fathers, what has this done with your children? So let's start with you, seeing as I'm here and I'm kind of want to know as well. So you said the first one was not lying.
Yeah.
But what are the other 2?
The whole Catholic thing, not raising you a Catholic, was pretty much not unspoken. I didn't really speak about it with your mom, but it was never part of the question. In fact, my dad got pretty angry at me when we didn't baptize you.
Well, he wanted to baptize me in his later years, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because as far as he's concerned, you're doomed to hell, right? If you're not baptized, you go to hell.
God doesn't exist.
Yeah, let's hope.
Well, I take out the throne every year to take away my sins, so I'm fine.
Yeah, just you keep you cover your bases.
Yeah.
So that was the second thing I would say. They're not raising you a Catholic and making sure that you had the choice that whenever you want, you can make a choice, whether you're spiritual or not. The third thing, probably the money thing. Probably not, make sure that you know the realities of needing money. Whether you choose to have it or not, that's up to you. But we need you to know that you need money to survive.
Yeah.
You can't just sit there hoping that it'll come in your lap because there's a God that will say, there you are, you're a good boy.
Yeah.
I suppose those are the 3 things.
Yeah, I think you have one coincidental similarity to what they had, which is because your dad works at a private school, you went to a private school.
Yeah.
Right? They went to private school when they should have stopped going to a private school because their means weren't there. When you're in a private school, your expectations are higher. Mm-hmm. You're amongst people with more means than you have. And there is a financial thing all the way through, an undertone of, I don't have as much money as my friends have. My dad doesn't have as much money as my friends' dads have, and the cars are the same. So it's a very different. It's coming from a very, very different position.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. As in, it's my kids are the same. My kids go to the same. Both our kids go to the school we went to, but for under very different circumstances.
Yeah, times have changed slightly because the world is I was gonna say bigger, but really it's smaller because with connectivity and that. At that time, it really was the way to go. If you were a middle class, you said you have to go to school, you have to study at university because that's the way to go if you want to be, if you want to be rich. And rich was the only way to go, right? Nowadays, it's a little bit different. You do have more options. Of course, like Fred says, at a private school level, the bar is a little bit higher, and you're trained to go out there and make a living. But I think you guys, because you can see things differently. The world is more open to you. You can see that there's another reality out there that isn't the one that they're feeding you at school. We didn't have that. It was just what we saw right here and what our parents and our teachers told us, and everything else was pretty much third world, right? You don't want, at least that's the way I saw it. You don't want to be part of that. You want to be there because it's the 80s. And,
we were raised to be rich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You haven't been raised to be rich. You're raised to be an individual that can decide whether they want to be rich or poet or whatever.
Exactly.
And that's quite different. But the private school thing is, in my case, my kids go to a private school that I went to because I wanted to have the option and to feel they have the option to do more things if they choose to. But my economic level isn't that of a private school family. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So in a way, it's the one thing that you don't have that I've had and that Albert's had is I've been to private schools and to public schools myself. And it's amazing how it changes. Very simply put, even in my own situation, when my kids were at the school down the road, we were the posh ones.
Yeah.
Now we're the non-posh, but we're the broke-ass ones.
Yeah.
Because now they're in a private school. You see what I same kids, same people. So it does, there's good and bad to both of those things. But it really is the same. It's the same. It's just a different place on the.
And there's a lot of rich people that went to public school. There's absolutely nothing wrong with public school or public university. But we were made to believe that it was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even an option. I mean,
it wasn't even an option.
It wasn't
like, no way.
We were not even. I mean, we doubted a lot of the things we were told, but because there was no internet, we couldn't check.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe what these old people are telling us. There must be more to. This is the conversations we would have. Must be more to life than all this. But there was no evidence.
There's no proof.
We were just sat here, Torremolinos, with like sippy sappy and a rock.
Yeah, and the old cliche. We had friends. I mean, we had friends at school whose parents had money, but they weren't necessarily super educated like my parents were. And when they came home, my mom let it know that she liked the guy, but she didn't agree with their lifestyle. And if we could maybe not hang out with him so much, it would be nicer because we'd get us some sort of disease or something,
Yeah,
and
snobbery.
Exactly.
Snobbery.
And my mom was a lovely woman, but she grew up like that, and there were standards and standards, right? So you didn't hang out with the son of a bar owner. If you could, you please hang out with the son of the president of Caterpillar, right? Like Google, right?
Yeah.
Those are okay, but this and we very quickly realized that 90% of our friends were bar owners, and they were perfectly fine, and they were really cool people.
I knew that. You guys, that was a shock for you guys.
I slowly.
You guys came from Madrid going.
Yeah. I'm talking more when we were like maybe 12, 13, not when we were 6 or 7.
Serve drinks to people.
No, but these guys were shocked at the type of problems poor people have, and by poor people I mean normal people, not actually poor people.
Yeah.
Right. These guys are horrified at some of the English kids in my class that had like domestic issues and money issues, and they worked in a bar, and they were like, oh God, the kind of problem. It wasn't necessarily that people are better and wealthy things; it's just a different kind of problem. But it was particularly, I remember Chenda being quite horrified by some of the issues that you've discovered in, Steve.
It's true. And then of course years later, as we grow up, you realize that it's not necessarily that these people have more problems than us high class people. Yeah. The truth is that those people, and I mean those people talking like my mom used to talk, those people have no problem talking about their problems, whereas the high-end people just shut up about their problems and don't say it. They stay in-house and nobody says anything because everybody has a perfect life. That's the only difference. Everybody else has exactly the same problem.
Well, and going back to the question that I asked you, I had the same question for you. What values, I guess, are you trying to impose on your children that you kind of feel like you missed out from your parents or in your dad or your mom?
I don't think I'm missing out any values from my sets of parents.
Yeah.
In my head, I've kind of put them all together.
Yeah.
Because my mom remarried somebody called Robert, and they were married for like 35 years or 40 years or something like that. So he also had a lot of influence, even though I didn't live with him. And then my dad was what he was, but he was a fairly clean set of things to sort of measure yourself against, good and bad. And then I had these guys. So I'm not really trying to change any values other than perhaps the one thing I'm compensating for a little bit is being there.
Okay.
Just being around and maybe being a bit affectionate with my kids. I'm just being around their life.
Yeah.
For me, if I had one hang up, I've never said this, exclusive. No, but if I have one hang up from growing up, it's remote families. The one thing that I think everybody at school should get hit on the head with a hammer clearly with this message is we were raised to believe that you want to go to Australia and live? Go to Australia and live. You want to go to university in Japan? Go to Japan. You want to go, why not go live with your girlfriend in Uruguay? Come on, the world's our oyster. What I've learned in practice, given I have family in Uruguay, family in New Zealand, I had family in the States, is as much as you can have FaceTime and internet and all that stuff now you didn't have then, distance, if they're not geographically with you, they're not in your life. And so I from the age of 9 or whatever, I loved my sisters. I had 2 sisters, one died, the other one's still around. And I love them dearly, and I love my mom as well. But it was a remote relationship. I had remote working. It was a remote relationship all my life. really, except for my first few years. And it's not the same. It's just not the same. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not going to be so quick. I'm going to let my kids decide. And if they want to go to Australia, I'm not going to have any choice but to let them. But I'm not going to be as flippant as my family was. Like, sure, why not? Go for it. I want to be near my kids.
Yeah.
If I can. Now, I don't mean they're going to be here where they travel or they do whatever. But I'm not going to be so flippant to say it doesn't matter. It does matter. Because if you decide to move to Uruguay,
Yeah.
and that's where you end up having kids and stuff like that. You can travel all you want. You can WhatsApp all you want. It's not the same. It is not the same. The reason look at his brother, in Miami, and before that it was Singapore and California and all that. He has not been in their life since the 90s, since like the early 90s.
Yeah.
And they're very much in touch. They're very much a lot of love and a lot of affection. But, I can just come over here and sit on this couch from my house 15 minutes away. It's the day-to-day that you miss out on. The same applies to my wife and her family and her dad in the States. The same applies to all of my family.
Well, and me now.
And me coming back, and and me coming back here in 2008 with my girlfriend, now my wife, to reestablish a base near where these guys are, that I see Nick and Albert and you guys every weekend. That is not even comparable with it being a remote thing. The value of being there for the little details, the boring details, the weekly things, through thick and thin. I think that I have a hang up about. I feel like I should have considered things a bit more. My family shouldn't have just gone poof.
Yeah.
Because as a result of that, I haven't had a relationship with my sister since I had a couple of years here and a couple of years there. And that sucks because I love my sister. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't think I ever talked about this, but it does. I feel passionate about it because I feel like it was too flippantly dispersed.
Yeah.
I like to be with the people that I like to be with.
Well, I agree, except that I think maybe because of that, I spoke about it in the first relationships podcast we had, is the fact that I believe that your family here is your family. Everybody else is the extended family, even if they're your brothers and sisters. It might be a different way of saying the same thing, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. No, but I'm not talking or else. I don't mean like my family from everywhere, all 15 levels of cousins should all be in the same town. I just mean if someone isn't in your town, they ain't in your life.
Yeah.
Whether it be a friend, a family member, or whatever. They can stay connected to your life through a thread. But lifestyle as long as we think it is, every year that goes by, the only thing that would, if any of our friends or family members, my sister or Chendo or whoever were here, it would be different.
Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, I mean,
It doesn't mean that they take priority.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they take priority over your own family or anything. Far from it. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just simply that it's too easy to forget that you have to be there.
Yeah.
To be there, as in that's where the magic happens. Magic happens in being in someone's life. Yeah,
that's definitely true. I mean, presence is presence. It's like you said, the details. If you miss the details, Chen could call me tomorrow and say, "What's up? How you been?" I mean, I could go into every single detail of everything that's happened in this week, but then, I personally can't see a point. I just say, I'm doing good, or I just tell them the big stuff.
Yeah.
If there's any big stuff going on.
So yeah, I think that's the answer.
Okay.
Everything else?
Fair enough.
It's all right.
Good answer. Two very different answers, but two very good answers as well.
Different experiences, I guess.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. We've talked a lot about a lot of stuff, and I feel like we just touched the surface as well.
Well, it's been a good introduction to Mr. Bloy here, to Fred, and our adventures, and we can spend
Hours.
podcasts talking about. All right, one thing that we have to say is that Fred and I have always been talkers. We spent hours and hours and hours trying to psychoanalyze ourselves, our people, relationships, women. In fact, I grew up thinking that was normal.
Yeah, me too.
And when I went out to the world and I tried to come in a conversation with people, they'd be like, "What the hell is this guy talking
so
about?"
deep.
I'd be like, "What do you think?" They'd be like, "What do you mean? What do I think?" It's like, "Well, what do you think?" Did you see her reaction or his reaction?
I think the difference.
So we can talk. What I'm trying to say is that we can talk and talk and talk.
The big difference on a superficial level is if you look at us two in our day-to-day lives, we're very different people, right? With different styles, different way we look, we're very, very different. And it'd be very easy to think, oh, so what's the connecting thread here? Is it just because they grew up together? Is it something else? When I listen to your podcast and I hear him talk, I agree with fucking everything he's saying. And that reminds me that on a fundamental level, we're the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I mean, you guys have been, ever since I can remember, every single Saturday, you guys see each other and talk from 8 at night until, well, now it's not as late, but until 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, before, like a few years ago.
And we talk about the same stuff.
Talk about the same shit every time.
We're talking about the same things year after year,
It's true.
except different people.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So I think it's a good place to end it. Thank you very much for coming on here.
My pleasure.
Our first guest, and it won't be the last time you come on here for sure. Well, yeah, thank you guys very much for watching this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you guys have anything to say, leave it down in the comments. And thank you both for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Is there anything you want to
again.
say?
Nothing.
No,
No, I'm good. I just said enough.
Well, actually, before we go, check out Fred on all the socials. I don't know. We'll leave the...
If you're buying a house in Spain,
Fred's a marketing guru.
Fred's a real estate Costa del Sol marketing guru. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching, and that's it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
ciao.